Greetings, aviators and aviation fans. This is Mike, the Chili Dog pilot. Hope you guys are doing well. It's another Saturday, last Saturday of February. And again, this usually takes about 3 or 4 weeks before these videos get out to the public, but just letting you know the time frame of when I'm filming this. So last video, I kind of debriefed my my little antics with the Lance when we had some issues with the autopilot, and I talked a little bit about instrument proficiency. I touched on a topic that I think is one worthy of me talking about today. So for today's video, the plan is this. I'm going to talk about flying clubs, and then I might go ahead and record me doing a couple of maneuvers. As I mentioned a few episodes ago or a few videos ago, I am currently working on my, starting to work on my commercial license, and you know, a lot of the commercial check ride are conducting several maneuvers. So the two maneuvers that I've been working on with my instructor are the Chandelles and then also the Eights on Pylons. So if time permits, maybe I'll do a couple practices of those in this airplane just so you can kind of see what they're like. All right, so I want to take a few minutes today to talk more about flying clubs. I'm a big fan of flying clubs. I spent the majority of my flying as a member of a flying club, and I'll share with you what I feel are some of the benefits. First and foremost, the cost of flying is significantly cheaper. You know, both in terms of the hourly rate, but also how that hour is calculated. In the rental situation, when you're paying an hourly rate, you're paying off a Hobbs time. So that's a meter that you know, is basically a clock, and it's recording, you know, time in 6/10 of an, or 1/10 of an hour. So it's every 6 minutes is 1/10 of an hour that's being charged to you, and that time is the same whether you're sitting on the ground with the engine running or you're, you know, at max performance climb. So it's irrelevant of how you're flying the airplane, as long as the engine's running. In most cases, that's what you're being charged. With my flying club and most flying clubs, they charge you by tach time. So it's basically the timer on the tachometer, and that is going to vary based on engine RPM. So most tachs run slower at idle or even lower RPMs or manifold pressures, and then typically are at the appropriate rate at cruise settings or higher. So you when I did my instrument rating, you know, many years ago in the Archer, I would typically see, you know, for every hour of actual flying, the tach time would be anywhere from 7/10 to 8/10 of an hour. You know, because a lot of times when you're training for instruments, you're at kind of a lower cruise setting and kind of that approach consideration, so like, you know, 2,000 RPMs or what have you. So your money stretches farther. Now the other benefit to a club that I think is often not recognized or understood is the freedom to operate that airplane much greater than you would with a rental. So in the case of the club, any member can take an airplane out for, I think, up to 7 days. So you can actually take the airplane out, go on trips, and not be you know, beholden to a certain hour per day type of charge, which you often will see in a rental situation, because those airplanes in the rental situation are there to make money, whereas the club, it's shared ownership. I mean, we kind of suggest to people, like, you know, if you're going to take the plane for a week, don't go an hour away to like the Jersey Shore, because, you know, we also want the airplanes to fly. But we've had a lot of members who go, you know, pretty far distances down to Florida to you know, Texas. You know, we had one club member who basically circled the U.S. For, like, you know, I think he got an extension on his time, but, you know, so you can do some really cool things in a club that you cannot do, you know, with a rental, or at least not as cheaply. So those are some of the benefits of the club. You know, the other consideration for a club, though, is that you need to remember is, you know, the club, all the cost of the airplane, you know, is spread across the club members. So one of the things you're going to pay for, in addition to the hourly rates, is all the fixed costs. So that includes the insurance. But the nice thing is that insurance covers you. You don't need to have additional insurance like you do when you're renting an airplane. So you're going to have to pay for the insurance. You're going to have to pay for the databases for the GPSs. So that subscription is going to be paid for as part of your fixed costs. And then the hangar fees. So the hangar rentals are also going to be shared across the club members. So for context, my club, as I mentioned, has 3 airplanes. We have a Piper Archer, a Piper Dakota. So basically, it's a Papa Alpha 2.8, but with a high performance engine. And then we have a Piper Land. So 3 airplanes. So that's 3 databases, 3 hangars, and then insurance for 3 airplanes. So our fixed cost per member is generally about $140 a month. So when you figure $140 a month plus a rental fee. We'll start with the Archer because that's what's pretty common out there. A rental fee of $105 an hour versus most of the Archers in this area run anywhere from $200 to $250 an hour. So if you're just flying 1 to 2 hours, a month, you're already saving money when you're in the club versus if you were just renting an airplane. And ideally, if you're, if part of what you're trying to do is build hours or just fly more, then the club makes sense in a lot of ways. So what are some of the downsides to the club? Probably the biggest one is sometimes the plane availability, right? So in my club, as I mentioned, we have 45 members. We are limited to 15 airplanes we're limited to 15 members per airplane, so for a total of 45. So there could be times where you just got to kind of juggle around with other people's availability on getting an airplane. Generally, I find that's not an issue. What I would say for my club, as it looks currently, I would say on average of the 45 members, probably a third fly fairly frequently. Another third flies periodically, and then there's a third that I hardly ever see flying. So ultimately what they're doing is they're subsidizing the rest of us who fly. And so great for us, probably not great for them, but I think in the big picture, they're probably also looking at it as, in their situation, they recognize the overall benefits of being in the club. So even if they don't fly frequently, it makes more sense to be in the club and take advantage of cheaper, flying than not being in a club and renting. And I think the other side, the other benefit, that we don't talk about of being in a club is the familiarity with the airplanes. I mean, you have, in our case, 3 airplanes that you fly all the time, so the personality of those. I remember when renting, each airplane, the panel was a little bit different, just the characteristics and little nuances were different. So with the club, you don't run into that issue at all either. I'm trying to think about any other downsides of the club. I think scheduling is probably the biggest downside, and like I said, it's not often a big issue. For us, I mean, just I think by nature of it, the Archer is our lowest priced aircraft. It's also the one that most people do training in, so it's probably the one that's most heavily utilized. The Dakota is kind of an in-between. It's a great travel machine, but it's also easy to get to. It's also limiting some people because it does require a high-performance endorsement, and not every pilot has that. And then the Lance is probably the one that this retractable gear. I think we now require 15 hours of instruction in it before you can get checked out, and that's based on insurance. And that one averages $200 an hour, which again, for $200 an hour, I could fly a Lance or I could go rent an Archer. So it's a no-brainer for me. And I think by and large, though, the Lance, most people will use the Lance either just to keep current in the Lance because we do have a currency requirement for it, or they're using it for trips. Whereas the other 2 airplanes probably have a mix. So typically the Archer stays more local and does training. The Dakota does a little bit of both. But I've done trips on all 3 airplanes, so it's really based on availability and whatnot. But so that's one downside of the club. The other downside of clubs in general is just the availability of them. We have several clubs in this area, and all of them have wait lists. There might be one up in New Jersey that has availability, but finding a club that you can get into immediately can be difficult. So I think that's something to consider. So if you're interested in a club, I would look in your area, see how many clubs there are, see which ones kind of match what you're looking for, both in terms of aircraft as well as just the personalities of the club members. But if you can, I would get on a waiting list for as many as you can. Okay, so we're going to start our first Chandelle. Again, the process here is we are going to fly into a reference point. We're going to begin with at maneuvering speed. We're going to begin with a 30-degree bank, max power, and then we'll pitch up to a maximum pitch attitude. We should be hitting that maximum pitch attitude at the 90-degree point of the turn. And then after we hit the 90-degree point, we're going to slowly decrease the bank until we are level and going 180 degrees the opposite direction. So I like to use the turnpike because that makes it really clear where the 90-degree point is. And we will begin with that. So okay, so we're gonna hold here at 2,000 feet. I am flying perpendicular to the turnpike, and we'll just hold it at 2,300 RPM. So that will give us generally give us our maneuvering speed of about 100 knots. Okay, and the other point here is, so we're timing it to max pitch at 90 degrees, and then we also want to make sure we stay coordinated throughout this turn. We have a bit of a crosswind, about 16 knots, so we'll just keep that in mind as well. That wind is going to come into a bigger play when we start doing 8s on pylons. Okay, so we're still parallel to the road. We're 2,000 feet. We're at 100 knots, which is maneuvering speed. We cleared and there's no traffic. Okay, so we're now over the highway. So what we're going to do is we're going to go left turn to 30 degrees, increase power to full, make sure we're on the rudder, and then we start pitching up slowly so that we're at our max pitch about 15 degrees at the 90 degree point. Okay, now that we're at the max pitch, we're going to start easing off the roll, and we want to get to opposite direction near stall speed. So we're going to keep pitching off the roll. And I was a little bit sloppy with the rudder there. And there we are at 55 knots. Okay, so the next process is just to lower the nose, hold our altitude, so we're going to hold 2,700 feet. Level. Okay, so my own self-assessment there was I was pretty good. I think I got the pitch in a little bit quick, but we got the pitch at 90 degrees. The biggest thing is we did not hear the stall warning, so I probably could get it a little bit slower. So I'm going to try for a 17 degree pitch next time around. All right, 2,000, we're at 100 knots. Coming up on the highway, which is our reference point that we're going to use. I got traffic off to our 1 o'clock, is not a factor. Okay, so there's the airport. We're going 30 degrees turn, full power. Now that we're at 30 degrees, we're going to slowly start pitching up, and I'm going to pitch up to 17 degree climb, because it seems like this airplane is going to want to. Now we're going to slowly roll out, and of course as we slow down, it's going to require more rudder. Okay, and then we're going to slowly lower the nose, build up speed, and as we build up speed, we can also continue to adjust the rudder because we're getting more airflow and less of the asymmetric drag. Okay, this time we're going to do a chandelle to the right. So again, it's going to require a little more right rudder in the turn, and then obviously as we slow down, we're going to need to add more rudder too. Okay, so we're starting at 2,000 feet. We are perpendicular to our reference point. We're at 2,300 RPM, so we're just coming up on maneuvering speed. This time we're going to the right, so a right 30 degree turn, pitch up to about 17 degrees, nose up, and then we'll level out going 180 degrees. So just from a reference standpoint, we are doing 150, so 330 roughly on the back end. Okay, so that's the reference point. We're going to go 30 degrees bank, increase the power, and we're going to now start pitching up. And we're going to keep adding right rudder as we pitch up. There's the 90 degree point, and there's 17 degrees. So now we're just going to go ahead and start slowly rolling out, where we roll out at 180 degrees. Okay, I felt like the entry to the right turn was a little bit better than the left turn, but I feel like I was a little bit sloppier on the pitch, and we didn't get to the stall speed either. So, again, things I need to work on. We'll see how this progresses. We'll do one more to the right, and then we'll go over a little ways to the farm and try to do some 8s on pylons. Okay, 2,000 feet. And PA. Alright, so 30 degrees bank, full power, and then we will start pitching up. And then right away we need to add a lot more rudder, and we're going to keep pitching up to about 17 degrees. There's 17 degrees. Now we're going to start rolling out of that 17 degrees. We're full power. There we go, that was much better. So now we're going to hold 2,700 feet until we pick up speed again. So the key to the 8s on Pylons is you're basically flying an 8 shape around 2 points. And what you want to do is you want to keep that point fixated on your wing. So it's not a ground reference maneuver in the sense like that you're making an equal turn around a circle like you do for the circle around a point. Here you want to maneuver around the object in a way that you're keeping a fixed position of that object as you turn. So the way you do that is, first of all, you got to be at a pivotal altitude. So for the speed of this airplane, that pivotal altitude is about 800 to 1,000 feet. And then when you do the circles, the way you measure how you are maneuvering in the circle is that object that you're circling is basically staying fixated on a point on the wing. So I am looking for an object that, 2 objects we can use. That water tower is going to be one of them. Then I think the second object is going to be that farm that we see, that farm building in between. So it's off by 10 o'clock. We set up for the 8s on Pylons. We're going to get down to about 800 feet. We are crossing between 2 of the objects right now. So there's a blue water tower and a red barn. And the trick here is we're going to maintain our speed, and we're going to maneuver in a way that the wingtip stays on the turning point position. So our first turning point is that red barn to the 1 o'clock position. We are basically flying downwind at this moment. We're going to hold this altitude for the time being. Actually, we're going to use that building with the solar panel. And then what we do in this maneuver is we climb or descend as a way to keep ourselves fixed on the object. Okay, I'm going to add a little power. And now, once we get that object on the wing, we're going to go ahead and begin our turn. And then what we need to do is, based on if it's climbing or diving, we adjust our turn based on that. So in this case, it's right there on our wing. We're obviously going to get terrain warnings because we're operating relatively low. And as you see there, what I had to do is I had to dive a little bit because the object was getting in front of me. Now I'm just holding this bank, and we're keeping that object right on the wingtip. Now I'm sighting out in front, looking for where the next turning point is, watching out for the birds. Okay, so now we're going to level out here, and then the next object we're picking up is that water tower. So we're going to do an 8 around that, and that's going to be our figure 8. So right now we're at 800 feet. Once the wing comes onto the water tower, we'll start our turn to the left and around that. Now we just watch to see if the tower goes in front of or behind our wingtip. Right now we are behind a little bit, so we're going to dive. Birds. Okay, and there's the turn around that point, and now we're back at the beginning point of our figure eight. So with that, we'll go ahead and climb out. All right, folks, hope you guys enjoyed that flight. We got a chance to talk about clubs and the benefits of being in a club, and then more importantly, you got a chance to see some maneuvering. We got a chance to practice the Chandelle as well as the eights on Pylons. I'm going to say that those were not necessarily textbook and by any means, but it's some of the maneuvers I am currently working on. And so probably the next flight I do is going to be with my instructor just to make sure I'm not developing any bad habits and to, fix some cues in there. But nonetheless, I hope you enjoyed flying with us. We will capture some more here I'll capture the landing at Doylestown, and then, we'll see you again in a week or so for another video. Doylestown traffic, Tomahawks, midfield, left downwind, 25, Doylestown.
Doylestown traffic, Skyhawk 769 Foxtrot Golf is on final for runway 23, Doylestown.
Skyman traffic, Warrior is going to overfly at 1,700 and join the left downwind 25.
Now, your traffic, Aero 58 Juliet, back taxing on 26 to departure, left closed traffic, Alexandria.
Doylestown traffic, Tomahawks left base, runway 23, Doylestown.
Skyman traffic, 3578, departing runway 25, closed pattern, Skyman traffic. Skyman traffic, Skyhawk 734 to November Alpha, turning left crosswind, runway 25, Skyman.
Skyman traffic, Warriors over the field, joining the left downwind for 25. I see some traffic on the downwind.
And Doylestown traffic, Tomahawks turning final, runway 23, Doylestown.
Skyman traffic, Warriors on left downwind 25.
Thank you again for watching today's video. If you could, please like, subscribe, and also share this with others. I appreciate your feedback on any of this content, and certainly I look forward to seeing you again sometime soon. Please take care.